Okay, so we looked at the joint between the coccyx and the sacrum, the tailbone and the sacrum. And I mentioned that it moves about 10 to 15 degrees, at least that's what the biomechanical studies that I've read. I don't even know if I've looked up that study, but that's what I heard. There you get to hear my philosophy on who gets to be right and sources of knowledge. But there is a joint, and the question is, how does that joint move? So this is actually, I don't think I actually have read the specifics of that direction of how it moves. I actually am now giving you information that I came up with in my body, just feeling into it. I did confirm this once with one of my teachers, but later on down the line, I will talk about and teach knowledge that really I don't have any proof for. Some of it I do, some of it I can quote biomechanical studies, and some of it is just from my perception of how the bones and the different structures and organs and muscles are moving. And I believe you can feel at a much deeper level than any science can prove at this point. So along the way, as we're working at the grosser levels, it's really useful to kind of look at the biomechanics and be like, yeah, you know, my feeling corresponds with what science is saying I should be feeling. But when we get to the point where we can't really look at the science because they can't measure that deep, then I don't stop us there. A lot of people will, but I don't stop us there. I actually say, well, what do we feel? And what makes us feel better? And that's where this piece of information originally came from. So thinking about the nutation of the sacrum, right, the question is, what is the tailbone going to do? By the shape of the joint, it's really only going to do one or two things. It's going to go forward into my pelvis, or it's going to go back towards the wall, right? It's going to do one of those two things. Now, if I think about it, there's all these muscles, which we haven't talked about yet, that form sort of a sling in the pelvic floor. And we have one muscle called the pubococcygeus, right? And that's connecting the pubic bone and the coccyx, right? So the pubococcygeus, the PC muscles, some people call them the Kegel muscles. They're actually far more complicated than just one band, but there is something connecting tailbone to pubic bone. So if I think about that and I think, oh, well, it's a muscle and it can stretch and move, but the fact there is something connecting it, what would I think would happen is the base of the sacrum, the bottom of the sacrum, I've called the base the top sometimes, some people do, but the bottom of the sacrum, as it's swinging back, what would the tailbone want to be doing? And my hand already does it, right? Because it's already sort of in my body and mind. That as my sacrum nutates and swings back, the bottom swings back, that the tailbone will actually swing forward a little bit. And it makes sense if you think about it, because if I were swinging a big weight, and we use that image of the tailbone being like keys, if I were swinging a big weight, I wouldn't expect the tailbone to get out in front of the weight. I wouldn't expect the keys to get out in front of my hand until perhaps the end, right? But if I just started nutating the sacrum or swinging the sacrum back, I would expect the tailbone, because it's suspended, to actually lag a little behind. And that's actually really what I feel happening. When we talk about actual and relative motion, they're two different things. So I feel like the tailbone swings back along with the sacrum, but that it lags behind a little bit, which is what accounts for that 10 to 15 degrees of motion, right? That the tailbone is actually traveling backwards in space, actually doing that, but lagging behind the sacrum, which is causing me to say that the tailbone is counter-nutating or moving forward. It's not actually. It's actually in space swinging back, but relative to the sacrum, that joint is bending. So see if you can think about that there is a drawing back of the sacrum, and a sort of suspended through the pelvic floor is slowing the tailbone down a bit, almost like letting it catch a little bit, but it's still expanding and sliding back. So you have this complexity of the imagery. So see if you can feel what allows the pelvis to feel most free? What allows for this idea of expansion in the back, but with a continuous line through the spine all the way down to the tail? And as I think about that as a theoretical guide to how I want my body or my movement to feel, I will notice the image subtly shifting. How much is that elastic sling drawing on the tailbone? Oh, that felt like too much, right? Or, oh, that didn't feel like enough. Or, oh, now my whole pelvis is tilting. Oh yeah, I want to just see if I can isolate this movement in the bones. So there you go. You have the swinging back of the sacrum, a subtle nodding forward of the tailbone, but all in all, both bones swinging backwards in space and then reversing, of course, to take us back up. And now you start to feel the complexity of how you can actually jump from your tailbone. And we'll talk about that in a bit. If you enjoyed this video, sign up for the InBody Space newsletter and share the link with a friend. You can also find original content on Facebook and Instagram.